basements are a huge concern for builders, homeowners, remodelers, and often the solutions are difficult and expensive. We all agree it's easier to get it right first, but there's some controversy on what that exactly means. So thank you all for being here. And we're going to talk about all these things and more in just a little bit. You guys have anything you want to talk about? We'll introduce ourselves in a little bit, so we'll wait till more folks get here. But anything you want to say about basements? Any big problems you've ever had with a basement? Oh, that sounds like a story.
I can talk about my own basement. When we planned, I have a walkout basement, so my backyard, my back of my basement is at grade level. And in March of 2010, we got a tremendous amount of rain, and the stream and the swamp, which are about, 400 yards behind my property or behind my house, filled up and up and up. So the water came in the door and then filled my basement up about a foot deep. And there was, at that point when you're flooded, there's nothing you can do about it.
Did your heating system get submerged?
One of the things that I learned many, many, many years ago when I was a young builder is all of the mechanical equipment that you put in a basement, always raise them a foot or two off of the floor. So I put down some concrete blocks, and I have a boiler and other tanks on top of those blocks so that I can get at least 1.5 feet of water before any of the equipment gets damaged. And the same with all my outlets in my basement. They're all at chest level rather than down at ankle level. So if I can have up to a 3-foot flood in my basement and none of the wiring will be damaged and have to get ripped out, because anybody who's had this problem understands that when the electrical equipment gets wet, Romex wire, for instance, or non-metallic wire, you can't just turn it back on. You have to rip it out because the water will get in that jacket and it won't dry out.
Man, this just demonstrates the stakes of basement detailing, right, that we're going to talk about tonight. I think we should get started. If you folks are wandering in, you'll catch up. Lance, would you be kind enough to tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Lance Lang. I've been with UGL, United Gilsonite Laboratories, for 12 years. We are the makers of Drylock brand product and Czar brand product. Tonight is strictly a basement discussion, and we'll answer any questions you may have.
Cool. Mike, you want to go next?
What do you want me to do?
Why don't you introduce yourself? I mean, I could do it, but that's kind of silly.
Oh, no, that's fine. Mike Gurton, contractor / remodeler / occasional single family home builder in Rhode Island. And I've been writing articles for Fine Home Building for like 25 years. So, and I do a lot of these webinars, and they're really fun. Yeah.
Travis, can you please tell us about yourself and what you do in your company?
For sure. Yeah, my name is Travis Brungard. I'm in Prairie Village, Kansas, which is 20 minutes outside of Kansas City. And I run a small residential remodeling and building company with my friend Joe Cook. I do a weekly show with GBA called BS and Beer that you might be familiar with. And then I'm also the local KC BS and Beer founder, partner, whatever you want to say about that. And I once got published in Fine Home Building, and I've written articles for years, but I've only been published once. So Mike's got me beat there. But it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, I want to thank UGL, the maker of Drylock products, for the sponsorship tonight and for the help bringing this important information to you all. And I'd like to remind folks that UGL has been advising customers on the prep and application of Drylock masonry sealers for 12 years. Lance has been doing this for 12 years. Lance, what did folks most get wrong about installing things in their basement with regard to waterproofers?
What do they get wrong? Well, number one, they don't pay attention to gutters, grade, drainage properly. That's probably what, those are the questions we ask first. When someone calls and they say they have an existing home and there's an issue with water infiltration, and we find out that, you know, they have serious leaks, it's generally a grade issue or a drainage issue.
And Lance segued us perfectly into the first part of our conversation, is that it's easy to get the details for a dry basement right from the start. It is way more difficult to fix things that are a problem later. I think you'd all agree. So I think most folks would say that a key line of defense with regard to keeping your basement dry are footing drains. Commonly, basement walls are either stacked masonry units or poured concrete on a wider footing. And the first thing that I would love to talk about is the pipe that commonly is installed as a footing drain. There's a lot of debate about where that goes. So does anyone want to weigh in and put their stake in the ground and say where you should put that footing drain? Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, you want me to put my stake in the ground?
Well,
yeah, sure. I'll do it. So I've done it both ways. In fact, I have photographs of me doing it both ways. I prefer to put them inside of the foundation. The reason I do that, or inside the foundation walls, underneath the concrete slab, one of my main reasons for doing it that way is because I put down roughly a 4 to a 6 inch deep, maybe even 8 inch deep layer of crushed stone, 3/4, ½ inch across and beyond the perimeter of the foundation. So I already have a connection between the outside of the foundation and the underside of the foundation. But because I put the pipes on the inside, they also work as a soil gas depressurization system, otherwise commonly known as a radon mitigation system. So I can run a passive pipe up through the walls inside the house, and it do double duty with the drain pipe. So one goes out to daylight or into sump to drain any water that gets collected by that drain pipe inside the under the slab, and the other pipe will rise up to the attic out through the roof, and that will depressurize under the slab passively. And there's some benefits to that, just primarily the radon, but also any soil moisture gets evacuated out that way as well, as opposed to the soil moisture migrating through the slab. So there's my stake.
Are you a believer on the inside, the footing method, or are you on the outside?
Well, we always do the outside. The inside is actually in our market considered an upgrade. So the exterior drain tile around the perimeter of the footing is what I thought we were going to be discussing, whether you set it on top of the footing at the base of the wall, or if you set it down adjacent to the footing side.
Can you explain that a little to folks? So there's some debate about whether you put it at the bottom of the footing or the top, and what's the debate?
So I got torched on this live and in person by my friend Jake Bruton, who he got me to switch to his side. And yes, we now put the corrugated plastic pipe down at the side of the footing. So when you excavate for your basement foundation, you end up with the bottom of footing is your top grade of soil. By placing the footing drain at that location, you are at the lowest point, theoretically, that water would affect your assembly. Mm-hmm. So picking up the water at that location and draining it into a sump pump to discharge it and evacuate it away from your home, the common understanding apparently is that that is the place that you want to collect your water. The way that I had previously been doing it before this scintillating conversation last year was to put a perforated pipe on top of the footing at the base of the foundation wall, which is still basically in plane with the slab. You know, your interior basement slab sits on top of that footing as well. So I thought by capturing the water at that, basically that transition between top of footing and base of stem wall, that I was capturing the water that could be sheeting down the face of the foundation wall. I thought I was capturing it at the point where it was most likely to rapidly flow in and evacuating it below the level of the slab. So I still think that there is some merit to both systems. However, if you properly detailed that area with crushed stone and a sock to keep the crushed stone from being clogged with sediment, I do now agree with Jake that I go ahead and evacuate at the lowest point.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate to Mike here and say, shouldn't we be intercepting the water that's on the outside of the foundation before it gets to under the slab?
So your presumption there is that the water is coming from outside the foundation. In my area, most of the water is not coming from the outside of the foundation because of other water management details that I'm working to with an underground gutter diverter at grade level. What I'm most concerned about, because most of the houses that I build or remodel are set like so close to our water table, like within a foot, that it's usually rising groundwater that we're trying to intercept. And that water is going to be a fairly level plane under the house. So it doesn't really matter whether I catch it on the outside of the footing or the inside.
Do you think if you had, a steep slope dumping at the, back of your house, do you think it would be wise to put it on the outside?
Oh, yeah. In that case, I would probably do two. I would do one on the outside and one on the inside. Again, that inside one giving me that radon vent. So yeah, either way. Something, Patrick, we should mention too for folks who aren't familiar with this, who are listening to us, who aren't familiar with the big marker system, is that there are a few tabs that you can communicate with us on the chat and the Q&A. If you do have a question, probably best to use the Q&A, and that way we'll see it. We'll monitor that. And if you want to chat amongst yourselves, you could use the chat function there.
Oh my goodness. So we already have questions. So the 8-inch crushed stone is under the footing. So you don't need to add pipe to link the outside pipe to the outside pipe. So you already have a gravel bed there that is allowing that interior pipe to communicate with on the other side of the wall. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks
for mentioning that, Mike. That is something I forgot, and I'm probably going to get fired for that oversight.
Don't worry. I'll talk to the boss.
You got more pull than I do, buddy. So I think you guys would all agree that one of the weak links in the assembly that we're all talking about with a foundation wall sitting on top of a footing is that joint there. What can we do about that joint? And the other thing I've heard problems with is a condition called rising damp, where soil moisture is moving through the footing into the concrete. You're laughing because this is something you've not heard?
No,
you think I'm making this up?
No, I've heard. I think it's a really great term, the rising damp.
It's English sounding, right?
It is. I heard it first from my cousin-in-law, who's British.
Yeah.
And I never heard it before that.
So anyway, this is soil-borne moisture that's finding its way into the concrete or the masonry units and moving through them. So you need some way to stop that movement of water, which is on a molecular level. How do we do that?
So you're talking about the capillary action of the water that's being drawn through the footing, that's sitting like in water, and then being drawn further up into either the concrete block or a concrete foundation. Or
if you have a block wall, it often is constantly venting out the top of the wall itself, right?
Oh, the cavities and cavities themselves. Yep. Capillary breaks.
So I've seen on GBA folks like paint a coating on a footing. I mean, does anyone do that in the real world? You do.
Yep.
That's a detail for you, Mike.
Pardon me, Travis?
I said that's a detail just for you. I've never witnessed one in my entire career being executed on any home.
Have you heard of this, Lance?
I have actually. Yes, we did it. We did a project in St. Louis where we used our dry lock waterproofing on the top of the block wall as a capillary break between that and that first plate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that case, you used it sort of at the top of the foundation. Could you use it at the top? So if we pour a separate footing, say a 18-inch wide footing by say 8 inches or 10 inches tall, and then we put our foundation wall on top of the footing, a pier wall, you could call it, with that same, could you still use your product on top of that to form a capillary break between the two?
Absolutely. The only